telling her about a time that I was really uncomfortable with the way and the place that I was attracted to somebody. And she just blew it off. She was like, Tim, you're really making a big deal out of nothing. It's really, really normal. And I was like, you're not hearing me. Like, this is a big deal for me. You know my history. This is my family history. This all connects to this. It's a big deal. And then she kept dismissing it as small.
Whoa.
And I didn't yell. It was very good. I like raised my voice a little bit though. I was like, you're not hearing me. You're not listening to me. I'm leaving.
For you.
And then we came back the next session, right? Like at that point we'd been working together 2 years. So there's like a definite repair. And she jumped in and immediately was like, I'm really sorry. You know, let's talk about what happened. Let's talk about what to do better. And from there, we had a closer relationship. And so I think that's another thing that more patients just generally need to do, but even more for a male patient with a female therapist, is be willing to have a boundary, but also be willing to have the repair if they're game for it. Right? Because people make mistakes. Clinicians make mistakes. It happens all the time. But it's just a matter of, are we modeling relational repair and doing our job well?
And has that ever been modeled in any other aspect of your life? For the grand majority of people, men and women, nobody has seen a really healthy rupture and repair. But to have an idea that that's going to be possible for you in this setting feels extremely alien. I've had clients mid-session where I'm like, I can see them visibly shutting down. I'm like, that was a really hurt you, didn't it? And like, wait, I'm allowed to say that? I'm like, yeah, of course you're allowed to say that. I tell clients as soon as I start working with them, the very first session, I'll say something along the lines of, listen, you and I are a team. I'm not above you. You're not above me. We're a team. So let's work through this together. There's going to be times where you're going to come into the session and you're going to be like, I don't want to frickin' see you today. Like, I want nothing to do with you today. There's going to be other times where I say something and it's going to piss you off, or it's going to bother you, or we might have a little bit of a rupture. I need you to tell me that. I know you've probably never experienced that in other relationships, and I will show that to you over time. But I'm telling you right here, right now, if there's ever something that bothers you, I give you 100% permission to say it, even if it's not perfect. And we will help you eventually get to the point where you can say it in a better or a more adaptive, productive way. And people have no idea how to respond to that. They're like, no. I've never had. And you're just outright saying it. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, when I do that, it's during the disclosure where we start talking about clinical boundaries, how if you're my patient, we're never getting a beer. You're never going to be in my life. We're never going to be friends. Period. Like, that's just how that works now. And it's because it makes it possible for me to hold that for you indefinitely.
Yeah.
Right? That's the whole reason for the therapeutic alliance in the clinical room, is that you can show up raw, you can show up unskilled, knowing the person across from you is holding their crap together for this hour and has the skills on how to sit with you while you figure it out. But that only happens because we don't have to go home and listen to you on the couch. Or like, if you're not paying your rent, it doesn't impact us, or whatever the struggles you're having aren't landing on us in our lives. And so I think that's another thing I always tell people to watch for, is if your clinician is overly disclosing their life. Like, and it happens. I've done it a few times, right? I think everybody falls into that trap a little bit, but it's something to catch of like, he just spent 5 minutes telling me all about his husband. Like, that's weird. I thought we were going to talk about my girlfriend today.
Yeah. There should never be disclosure unless there's a purpose for it.
100%.
Like
100%.
Ever. Like, the amount of clients that have told me that their therapist spent half the session telling them about their divorce. It's like, why do you know that?
Yeah.
Why do you know that? Why do you know their kids' names? Why do you know all of this information? Like, that's so tricky. Inappropriate. But then you'll see the other side where it's like, they literally don't utter a word. They're just like a brick wall.
Yeah.
Productive either.
Well, I think it depends. I got a guy who does Freudian therapy, and he says 3 sentences a session, and he does great work with guys that are incels. I don't know how. I can't do it in 3 sentences, but he does. right? It takes all types. I kind of come up on that line quite a bit because it's pretty common in my sessions to say guys like us. And so it seems like you can model the generalized, like divorce is hard. I've been through one. Like that's a good way to normalize it. But if all of a sudden you're going into the details of what happened in your life,
100%.
if you're going into like where you're at, the best advice I ever got from it was my first professor. And he said, I've been doing this for 20 years. Anytime you ever have a thought to disclose something from your life, don't. Sit on it for that session. And then if it comes back around, you'll have thought about why it needs to be in the room. And 90% of the time, I find that it didn't need to be in the room. And that's held pretty true for me.
That's really great.
That was really solid. Like, oh no, I got to go talk to my friend about that. I'm pretty pissed off. Okay, check.
Yeah.
Maybe Joe didn't need to hear about that while he was talking about his dog.
You have to do it in a very tactful way if you're going to do it. Like you have to have a very, very clear, definitive reason for why you're doing it. Otherwise, the person really is going to be like, are they here for me or for them?
Yeah.
Like that had nothing to do with what we were just talking about. Or I feel like now I have to take on your burdens, which is what happens to a lot of guys. People just talk and they're not, their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences aren't really heard. So it's like, okay, here's another setting now where someone is just talking me about them, and now it's not safe for me to share anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's hard to come back from, but as a patient, if your therapist has done this where they've taken up to your time and they've maybe shared more than you're comfortable with, again, give them the chance to repair it, right? Say something. And if they do it badly, go get another clinician, right? You can always go shop clinicians. I know a lot of clinicians oddly get offended that people shop therapists, but I think that's dumb. We're providing a service.
I tell people you should. It's like dating. Go date around. See who you get a good vibe with.
100%, right? More than anything else, good therapy boils down to vibe. That's most of our outcome, is that you can respect me, I can respect you, and we can have a conversation. After that, it's all gravy. But give somebody that you've worked with a minute a chance to repair with you, because it, like what happened with my therapist, our work got better, we were stronger, she had a better understanding of me after that rupture, right? But if I hadn't said anything, or I hadn't come back for the next session, and my thought was going into the session after that was either we're going to close out, like this is going to be our goodbye, or we're going to fix this. Mm-hmm. And I was comfortable going into the session with either outcome.